It's a mailbag edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast. Hit the music, Dave.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's podcast is brought to you by Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your own hockey franchise? Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want. Locked On listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in the game store. To download the game, just visit hockeygm.app or look it up on the App Store. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. The Florida Panthers are starting a bit of a dynasty. It's 2 straight trips to a Cup Final, and now they're just 1 away from winning a Stanley Cup. So still a little ways away from calling them a dynasty, obviously. But what they've done the last couple of years, I mean, they're putting together some serious runs here at a dynasty, I guess. It's maybe the start of one, perhaps. They win 4-3 over the Edmonton Oilers. They take a 3-0 series lead in this one. This thing's all but over, Dave. It's all but over. Cup's not going to be on Canadian soil once again, huh?
Well, I know that disappoints you so much, but I'm surprised that it's looked, I wouldn't say this easy for Florida, but that it's gone to this point, and just that we got two championship series right now that have been almost identical in how they've played out so far.
Yeah. I mean, both looking like they could legitimately both be sweeps. I'll tell you what, though, the Oilers doing their absolute best Maple Leafs impression in this Cup Final. Like, really, think about what's going on with Edmonton right now. The Stars can't score, right? They've got like Draisaitl doesn't have a single point. McDavid, I think, has 3 points, 3 assists, but no goals. Hyman hasn't scored a goal. Like, Nuge hasn't gotten, I don't think, a point at all. Like, no one is scoring. No one's scoring on that team. The power play, 0 for 10. So they're getting creamed in the special teams department, and just kind of getting meh goaltending. Is that not exactly what kills the Leafs?
So it's not just a Leafs problem.
Well, it kind of goes to show, so the Leafs consistently unable to get over the hump, right? They finally did win one round, I suppose, but for the most part, they get eliminated in round 1 every year. And what do we always say? The Stars don't show up. Well, the Stars showed up for the Edmonton Oilers, and they carried them all the way to a Cup Final. You had McDavid and Draisaitl and Bouchard and Hyman putting up gaudy numbers and consistently torching their opponents on the power play. Like, all that was clicking, and then all of a sudden, the power play dries up. The Stars unable to get to those areas and can't find the back of the net. And the Oilers are basically right where the Leafs are, unable to win big games. So Toronto's not that far off. Maybe it really is just about the Stars competing and scoring some goals and putting up offense. Because if they can do that, maybe the Leafs are a little closer than we give them credit for.
It's also the Atlantic Division.
Well, yeah, they also would have to get through Florida at some point too. You're right.
Right.
Remember we were having a debate. Who would you rather play in the first round, Florida or Boston? And there's a lot of people who said they prefer to play Florida. I
was one of them.
What's that?
At one point, I was one of those people, and then I was not.
At one point. Yeah, not at the start of the playoffs. Yeah, exactly. Doesn't matter. They weren't able to beat Boston either. So, but it could have been a sweep or a 4 or 5 game loss if they would have played the Panthers. At least we got a sweet 7-game series. But anyways, we got a lot to get into today, so let's get right into it. It's a mailbag edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast. We received 19 questions from you guys, whether it's technically, actually, I think up over 20. Little late straggler came in from the Discord. But between Twitter and YouTube and Discord, yeah, over 20 questions. We'll try and get to as many as we can. If not, we'll kind of maybe we'll have a part 2 next week as well to answer the remainder of the questions that we have. But why don't we get things started? And I want to start with a Twitter question, actually. I think that one makes the most sense. And this one coming from Galindo TML. This is a great one, actually. Got the juices flowing. You have access to a time machine. Other than Matt Sundin, you could add 2 players from the 03-04 Leafs team on 1-year league minimum contracts. Who you taking? I like this. I love this type of question.
I love it
This
too.
is the question that make mailbags a lot of fun because it's hypothetical and it kind of also tickles the old nostalgia gene a little bit. So I'll give you my answer, and then you can give me your answer afterwards, Dave. And I think that realistically, it's a pretty easy one. First and foremost, Ed Belfour. Like you get your number 1 goalie, right? You go and get that number 1 tendy, Eddie B, the Eagle. Had a 213 goals against and a 919 save percentage that year for the Maple Leafs. So yeah, I will take that from a goaltender. I think he played like 60 games too. So like that's exactly what you need for this team. So Eddie Belfour and then Brian McCabe is the other player that I would want to bring over. Brian McCabe, you bring over that right-hand shot. He's got a bomb. He could power play, quarterback this power play. He was at that point, he had 16 goals, 37 assists, 53 points. He was like 28 or 29 years old at that point. And that's who you're getting, by the way. It's like that season's player imported into this year was kind of the way the question was worded. So you get a guy who hopefully can quarterback your power play and gives you that right shot, top pair defenseman, then a rock star in Ed Belfour, Hall of Famer. So those are the 2 players that I'd pick from that team.
So I like those. I also agree on the Ed Belfour one. Like if you can get an Ed Belfour, you do it. I was trying, and initially I was going to go with McCabe too, but I'm looking and say, okay, who else would I consider other than McCabe? There's 2. I'm going to actually go with Brian Leach.
Don't stop. Okay, but here's the thing. So I specifically asked, what player are you getting?
Yes.
That player or that player in their prime? So Brian Leach played 15 games for the Maple Leafs that year and technically got hurt, did he not?
He played all 13 games in the playoffs, and he averaged 28 minutes a night, and he had 8 points in 13 games. So he was even though he wasn't the Brian Leach.
He's like 40 years old.
35. 35. Yeah. Not too bad. The other, I'll give you my second option other than Brian Leach. My other option, again, another oldie, but still a good player, Gary Roberts.
Gary Roberts was the other guy who I was considering as well. I mean, McGillney was on that team still at the time. They had a loaded team. Like I went back and looked at the roster. I'm like, how did this group, like that team, the 02 team, the 03, like that early 2000s, right before they had to come and screw everything up with the cap, this team was putting together some squads that gave this franchise hope, and that's where my fandom built on this team. Obviously, you're the same way, right? Those early 2000s teams and those early 2000s runs, but they had some solid players. But you can't go wrong with any of those guys. I think that was a fun question.
0102 remains my favorite team from the 2000 era, though.
Yeah, I agree.
They were close.
I agree. Just a couple games, man. Couple games away. Made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Final. Haven't seen that any other time in our lifetime. All right, next question. This one comes from our friends over at Locked On Senators. Best offer for Jacob Chychrun. What's the best offer you would make for Jacob Chychrun, Dave? He's got 1 year left on his deal, and then he's an unrestricted free agent.
I'm trying to. I went back when I saw that question. Okay, what did Ottawa pay to get Jacob Chychrun? So that was a conditional first, a conditional second, and so it's two and another second round pick. like if anything. And the
Not
conditional
worth
was that it was a top 5 protected. Like the thing is, they overpaid based on like the fact that he's gone. I don't see him returning just fly out because I think he's gonna go and find another. I'm trying to remember now. Did he have a no trade clause when he went to Ottawa?
I
Or he had
think so, maybe modified. But what would you give up though? Like that's from the Leafs perspective. What if they called and said, "Give us your best offer"? What does that look like?
I'm giving them a first, and I would give them maybe I would throw in like a prospect in there. They can like I just can't see giving up more than those two pieces for a guy who's on like essentially he's going to be a rental unless the Leafs were to find a way to sign him to a new deal. That's the
Well,
part
I
there.
think that would be the caveat, right? Like, all right, let's say a sign and trade is in the works here, right? Does that
Okay.
change your offer?
It does. I would still include the first. I would include like maybe like a prospect like Fraser Minton, and they want a defenseman back, I would assume, potentially. Like I don't like the thing is like what defenseman could the Leafs really offer? Like right now the only
Like
like
Niemela would be like the
I was
only
gonna say
other
like
guy.
Niemela would be one potentially. I don't know if a Noah Chadwick even gets that conversation going.
Yeah.
He's kind of fringe right
Okay,
now.
like is Chychrun a better option than like what is out there in free agency though? Like
Not
my
really.
answer to
Like
this question, honestly, my answer to this question, I'm hanging up the phone. I don't want Jacob Chychrun because the Leafs don't really have, I
yeah.
think, what it's like. If the Leafs had a couple second round picks and whatever, okay, I could do like 2 2s and Nick
Mhm.
Robertson and a Niemela or whatever, like put together something like that. But I don't think I want to give up a first round pick for Jacob Chychrun because the contract that he's going to want, I think I can get better in free agency or and then not have to give up that first round pick on top of it. Like I think this is maybe me just being a little lower on Chychrun than most. But like give me Brady Shea over Jacob Chychrun, then I don't have to give away a pick.
Yeah.
So my answer to that question is unless you want to take like a dirt cheap deal, you're not getting a first round pick. Figure out what else you want. But no first round pick, no Easton Cowan, no Fraser Minton. What other random scrap picks and prospects do you want? Probably not going to find a deal, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's again, if the deal makes sense, I'd think about it, but at the same time, I prefer if they went after guys who could play on that right side. Like they seriously need that more than I
Yeah,
think going after Jacob Chychrun.
yeah, agreed. All right, next question from Starchevic Frank. Who is number one D player in RFA? Mine is Brady Shea.
I'm assuming he
Uh,
means UFA because the Leafs can't really go after an
True.
RFA.
I would imagine, yeah. I would imagine that's what he's trying to say. Who's the best defenseman in the unrestricted free agent market? Frank believes Brady Shea is the top guy. Like I might agree with him, Brady Shea. It just if we're talking about who is maybe the best one out there in terms of who's the best fit for Toronto. Oh, maybe that's a different question. But let's answer the question as is. Who's the number one defenseman on the market? To me, I think it's Brady Shea.
Yeah, I think age and just what he can do out there, I would tend to agree with that. I I never considered Brady Shea just because I thought he's a guy that Carolina would want back because they're going to lose defensemen. I mean, they
Well,
took one guy
they,
off the market.
yeah, they signed Jalen Chatfield today to a 3x3 contract, one that I wouldn't have minded if Toronto got in there. But yeah, they could sign Shea back, obviously, but as of now, he's available, right?
Right.
Um, I guess like the follow-up question to answer is like, well, who's the number one player that fits the Leafs needs? And to me, as much as everyone hates it, because I've been reading the comments the last couple days. To me, it is Chris Tanev. Like
Mhm.
it just is for me. It's Tanev. They need someone who's big, somebody who not necessarily like big, but someone who's strong, someone who can hit, block shots, play defensively, great stick. Like Tanev is just a shutdown defenseman who can get the job done. Um, so for me, it's probably Tanev if I'm talking about best fit for the Maple Leafs. Pesci you can put in there as well, actually, kind of as like a 1A, 1B.
For me, you looked at what Aaron Ekblad did in this game, especially in that final minute. You need someone like that. The Leafs need, like, they have Jake McCabe, but they need another one like that. I think Chris Tanev is more defensively sound than Jake McCabe, and I think he's a guy that would be thrown into all those situations and would love it. He would throw his body. He's only put his face in front of a puck to make sure it doesn't get in the back of the net. Definition of a warrior.
Multiple. Yeah, 100%. And here's what I find hilarious. Like all the comments, oh, he's too old and too injury prone. And it's like, okay, I understand that. But also, did you see what he did for Dallas's defense and how he just made that decor unpenetrable? And to their point, the reason why they ended up losing to Edmonton is probably because Tanev got hurt and wasn't himself. So that is a valid point. But I find it funny how, even at the deadline, everyone's like, oh, that guy's old. You don't want Tanev. He's injury prone, blah, blah, blah. But man, when he's there, he's a hell of a player. Hell of a player. All right, let's take a break and then we'll get back into some more mailbag questions on the other side. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Hockey GM. Hey, Locked On Leaf fans, I want to take a moment to bring up one of our partners, the mobile game Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your own hockey franchise? Do you think you can run the Leafs better than the current general manager? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is most definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the seasons, and lead it to glory. Hire the right coaches and staff, trade players and picks, navigate through free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic game world. As a Leaf fan, you know there is no off-season. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances, and that's why I think you are going to love the game. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want. By the way, Locked On listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in the game store. So make sure to check it out. Download the game at hockeygm.app. That's hockeygm.app, or look it up in the App Store. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you, as we are each and every weekday here on Locked On Leafs. It is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast. You can find it wherever you get your podcast at, and also up on YouTube. Today is a mailbag edition of the show. We're going through the listener questions. We've received over 20 of them. I think we've only gotten to like 3 of them. So chances are there's going to be a couple of additions to mailbag because we're taking a little long on some of these. But without further ado, let's continue on with our mailbag, and let's get to this next one here, which is a bit of a personal one, Dave, from Real 42069 Human, which if you don't know who this person is, you would probably assume it's a bot based on that name. But honestly, a loyal listener, Dave. This is a loyal listener. He's a hater sometimes, and he loves to troll, but he's a loyal daily listener. So shout out to you. And they want to know, when did you and Dave first meet, and was it a meet cute? Dave, you want to explain?
I'm trying to wrap my head around meet cute. That's terminology that I'm not exactly.
You've never heard of a
as
meet
familiar.
cute?
No, not really.
Oh, okay. Here, let me find the exact definition of it. But like, essentially,
Okay.
it's like a really cute So in a film or a television show, an amusing or charming first encounter between two characters that leads to a development of a romantic relationship between them. So like basically the first encounter of every single Hallmark movie.
Yeah, so we
is
definitely
basically
didn't have
what it
that.
means.
That
No.
definitely didn't happen here. Mike and I went. I mean, we went to school together. We were in the same journalism program. I was always the guy willing to help people with tech stuff. I think that's kind of where it all kind of started. Work on some
Mhm.
sort of project. Everyone came to me for help. Kind of how it all
I mean,
started. Yeah,
there's 30 of us in a class, and you just kind of
yeah.
start chatting with everyone in your class. And, Dave and I are both just like sports nuts and talked about
You didn't hate
sports.
on
And
my Cowboys on like half of the people in that class, so I picked you
yeah,
in
I
the
didn't
top
love the
spot.
Cowboys, but I guess I didn't
Damn.
hate on them a whole lot. And I was ultimately like, I guess our friendship took a next level, I suppose, when he joined the podcast. I was looking for
Yeah.
somebody to come and help me when I was working a little more full time when I got at TSN, and David was willing to do a little bit of the background behind the scenes legwork. And I was like, yeah, I could bring a second guy on, someone to bounce ideas off of. And, Dave, I was like, hey, man, when we were in school, we were bouncing ideas and just talking sports and basically doing podcasts in
Mhm.
class anyway. So it's like, yeah, that works. So the answer is we met at school, journalism school. And, the friendship kind of bloomed from there. So that's the answer of how Dave and I first met. All right. Next question from the Hockey Burner. How high do you think Treliving is willing to go on AAV in term with Marner before he determines they have to go the trade/own rental route? All right. Interesting question.
Mhm.
Um, this is what does make the Marner situation a little bit difficult because I don't think he's willing to go much past what he's making now. But like Marner was making this money when he was 22, 23, 24 years old. I would imagine he's going to be looking for an increase now that he's finally hit unrestricted free agent status, and he's got a couple of all right wing, uh, you know, in his back pocket. So, if I were tree living, I guess to answer the question, I wouldn't be willing to go much past what he's making now at 11 million. Like realistically, I wouldn't. I'd sign him to an 8-year deal. I'd give him 8 years. But I don't think I'd give him much more than 11 million a year. Will he take that? Will he basically re-up what he just made over the course of the last 6 years? I doubt it, but I guess we'll have to see. But that's my answer. I'd be willing to go 8 years at 11 million bucks. Give him an $88 million contract. Call it a day.
Yeah, that's essentially where I'm at. The 8 years is kind of, that's your commitment to him. The money, as you said, like Nylander's making 11 and a half. That kind of signals kind of, the new pecking order in terms of where the Leafs are with like Matthews is the top guy. No one goes above that. Nylander put himself a lot higher. And, it's not like Marner and Nylander are that far in age. They're 1 year apart. So I think that $11 million makes the most sense. Will he take that? I don't think Mitch Marner takes that because I think he believes he can get about 12 and a half because that's the number I keep hearing out there. So if somebody truly believes he's going to get that, then he's going to have to go somewhere else to do it.
Well, we were hearing 11 and a half on Willie, and we thought that was insane. And lo and behold, that's what he signed for. So if we're hearing that's what the number's probably going to be, then that's probably what the number is going to be. And well, I don't know if it's going to be here in Toronto, though. All right, next question from Youngster Down. Once Marner leaves town, trade or walks next year, who will take the next most heat if there's no success again next year in the playoffs? So if there's no Marner, who's the next whipping boy? I think is basically what Youngster Down is asking. It's a good
Are we
question.
talking about player?
I-
Can we? That's the one thing when I saw the questions, I probably should have asked: is it just the player, or could it be anybody on this organization?
I mean, I
Because
guess
we
it's
already know
open to
who it is.
Shanny would be, I guess, like the number one, but in terms
If we're
of
looking,
player, though, like who's the whipping boy for player? I
I already know my answer actually on that one.
okay,
It's
what is
John
it?
Tavares. He's kind of getting it now, but he would take it a lot more, in my opinion.
Probably like, yeah, that's probably the right answer. Like the answer is probably more simple than you think. But I wonder also, it's gonna depend on how the season goes. Like,
True.
like
Why are we already
I
setting
could-
ourselves up for this, guys? Like, what's going on?
I know. But like, I could see Morgan Riley being a whipping boy if he has
He
a
was my
bad
second
season.
option.
It's like, oh, we're paying. Like I could see that being the case. Like if Willie doesn't score 40 goals again and he comes out and kind of lays an egg the first couple months of the year, I could see him being a bit of a whipping boy. I mean, people are already getting on David Kampf and his contract. So, like, I know it's a guy a little lower down the lineup, but David Kampf making $2.4 million as your fourth line center for a penalty kill that's, 73%. Don't love it. Don't love it. I'll tell you that. So, I think there's a couple of options probably. So yeah, there's the answer to that one. All right, let's do one more, and then we could take another quick break. So here's the next one here. This one was from YouTube at Larceny3092 on YouTube. What is the best blockbuster trade you want to see Treliving make? Ooh, great question. What blockbuster trade would we like to see Treliving make this summer, Dave? I'll let you answer that one first.
The more I thought about the Vegas one, the more I kind of wanted it to go down, because I think if there's a team that's willing to go out there and make a big swing for a player, and they'll do what it takes to get that player, it's gonna be Vegas. I think they're willing to get
explain who you're talking about
for Marner, right? Like, first off, the only blockbuster trade I can see the Leafs making is Marner, right? And so, I know some people are going to think Tavares, but I don't know if that would be a blockbuster. Right?
Well, hey, okay, so you're taking this as who the Leafs trade away.
Yeah.
But like, you don't think if they traded for Jacob Markstrom, that would be considered a blockbuster trade?
Yeah. Yeah, it could be. I just don't realistically think that Calgary is going to do that.
That's the question is, what do you want to see Treliving do? I want to see Treliving make a fair trade for Jacob Markstrom. That is the blockbuster that I would like to see. Bring in that number one goaltender, baby.
I want to get that stud defenseman. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, because I just think the free agent pool is going to be very tough. If they don't get that, you don't have many other avenues to do it. And I think trade for defenseman would be your best option. And if Marner's willing to do it, you're able to make that happen.
All right. Fair enough. All right. One more really quick one, and you can answer this one. You can answer this one for me.
Okay.
Super Scout 19. Please let David read the sponsor promos again. Is that a yes or a no on this upcoming sponsor promo? That
you just throwing me in that one. Huh?
I didn't ask it. Super Scout 19 asked it. Are you?
Yeah. Okay. Then I'm gonna find out that Mike's got a burner account called Super Scout 19 somewhere. All right, let's do it. I got it queued up here. I'll do the next.
Let's go. All right, we will continue to answer your.
If you hate it, if
right
the people hate it, you blame Super Scout 19.
That's right. That's right.
No hate on me, okay?
No, blame Super Scout 19. We will continue with the mailbag after Dave delivers an electric ad read. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is what keeps your ride or die alive EB Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. When you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Well done, Dave. Well done. I heard everybody clapping in their cars, and
I brought the Azuri passion to that one a little bit.
Forza. Saturday. Let's go. Saturday's going to be a big game.
I swear, I want to be in a good mood on Monday. I hope they don't. It's Albania. Please. Please.
I mean, realistically, it's either this is what happens with Italy when it comes to these tournaments. They're either like into the championship final, or they get eliminated in group stage. It's one or the other, and they're in the group of death. So we'll see what ends up happening. But yeah, Italians Euro Cup, excited for it. Kicks off today, I believe, actually, if I am not mistaken. Yeah, Germany kicks things off, and then our boy Forza tomorrow afternoon. All right, let's continue on with our mailbag here. Next question comes from Lucas Fetter 3499, and then there's actually it's a two questions for us. What are relationships between franchises and their ex-GMs when it comes to trades, specifically or especially Dubas and Treliving with their former employers? I think like everyone's different, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody's a little bit different. I would say those two specifically, it didn't sound like either situation was, like an amicable breakup, which is why you probably won't see a lot of deals between, the GMs and their former employers. But I mean, everything's kind of different, right?
Yeah.
Time heals all wounds, I guess, is what I would say. Like eventually, I'm sure we'll see, the Penguins and Maple Leafs make a deal, or the Maple Leafs and the Flames. Eventually, I'm sure a deal will be made. But things seemed a little fresh this past season for stuff like that to go down, it seemed.
I think the big one here too, if you're a GM, you cannot put yourself in a position where you say, I'm not dealing with this guy because I used to work for him or whatever.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot when Brian Burke came to Toronto.
Well, I don't necessarily think that it's the general manager. Well, okay, go on with your Brian Burke point, because you are right on that one.
Because when Brian Burke came to Toronto, a lot of the trades he made were literally call up Anaheim, go and get someone that he knew. Jaguar, Boscheman, Lupul, Mike Brown. Like they're always Anaheim guys that Burke brought into Toronto.
And there was one team he specifically did not work with, and that was a vendetta, the Edmonton Oilers, because of the Dustin Penner offer sheet, if you recall. I think most times, or maybe in this specific instance, I think it's more of an ownership thing with Treliving and the Calgary Flames. But yeah, everyone's different, obviously. All right. The second part of the question. Have you any insight about Leaf scouts, especially about their work now pre-draft, how much influence they have on selecting drafted players or potential players for trades? Thanks for your answers and all of your podcasts. Oh, thank you for the question, Lucas. Appreciate that. Love the support. You want to take the first stab at that one?
Well, I mean, I think it plays a huge factor. Like you look at picks that the Leafs have made, every GM, Kyle Dubas has mentioned this many times, how much a specific scout has pushed the player. William Nylander, when he got drafted, I'm blanking on the name of the Swedish scout who basically was pushing. Like, would have literally put the card in himself for the Leafs to pick Nylander.
Yeah.
Like, there are scouts who feel so highly about a player that they are going to tell the GM, like, we can't miss. If we have the opportunity to take this guy, we got to take him.
Like Matthew Nyes was a similar player. I mean, Easton Cowan, like someone was banging the table for Easton Cowan last year because he wasn't anywhere near the first round in most people's boards. But you know, their OHL scout clearly saw something in him. And Wes Clark, who's the director of amateur scouting, saw something in him and decided to take him. I think the answer to your question, so like, do I have any, I guess, insight about Leaf scouts? Like their main scout, their director of amateur scouting is Wes Clark, and then he's got a bunch of amateur scouts and pro scouts that he kind of delegates. And this all season long, you have these a bunch of scouts go out and they have their specific regions that they scout players, whether it's the OHL, WHL, QMJHL. You could have the Northeast Collegiate, you could have the Southwest Collegiate. You've got your SHL scouts, your Russian junior scouts. Like you've got scouts all over the world, and then they all come back to Toronto. Usually around, a couple months out from the draft. They compile, they all talk about these players, who they saw, they bang the table for who they like, they make their boards, and then eventually the general manager kind of comes into the fold and they fill him in. Okay, this is what we're thinking. These are the players that we like. And ultimately, Treliving has the final say in drafting, but he does lean on the scouts to inform him on his decisions. So I don't know if that answers the question for you. The scouts have a lot of say and influence on who the team selects, but ultimately it is the general manager who has the final say, I guess, is kind of the answer there.
Tommy Bergman was the guy who pushed the Leafs to go after Nylander.
Shout out to him. And shout out Wes Clark, who's done a great job for the Leafs scouting staff last few years here. All right. Next question. Oh, this one was a very interesting one, actually. Snakes.
Snake Splitskin 4119.
Sure. Let's go with that. Question. As broken sticks are very common, are hazardous and potential disruption in play, why aren't they picked up immediately? Either a linesman or a second ref trailing the play just needs to quickly dump them in each bench while going by. It's a fair question. Like, why don't they, like, when a stick breaks and explodes in the middle of the ice, it just sits there until the next commercial break, essentially, or until the next whistle. Like, why can't a ref, if I could understand if you're not skating past it, but like I've seen refs just literally just skate right by a stick and not pick it up. Like, why not just pick up the debris and dispose it instead of having it laying around for someone to maybe trip on, or for a puck to hit and then that could break up, some sort of play on the ice? I really don't know the answer to the question per se. I think maybe it's just because the league wants the refs to be like in position all the time and not waste a second or two to pick it up and put it in the bench, and maybe they take their eye off a play and something happens. So I would assume just let the refs are paying attention to the play would be the answer to the question, but I really don't know the actual answer.
I think it's twofold. One, it's just part of the play, right? Like if the stick breaks, you kind of have to. It's part of the play. You just got to leave it. But I think it's the refs. I used to see refs pick them up in the past. Like if the play goes the other way, the ref could quickly pick it up and dump it. But I also think like you don't also want the refs to be caught out of position now because they focused on the broken stick rather than the play that's going on. Right. Let's say something happens or like a fight happens and this ref is too busy. He was putting the stick away and he's not right in there to help with like a scrum or something. I just think it's a matter of, it's not a priority for them until it legitimately becomes a huge problem for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know the answer to the question, but those seem like logical reasons as to why. Do you think we have time for one more, or should we just actually save it for next week?
If we got a quick one here, we can do it.
I don't know how many quick ones we got because there's still like 7 or 8, and they may take some time. Why don't we save them?
Okay.
Let's save them. Unless there's one more. Hold on. Let me see if there's one more that we missed that we can get into. Locked on Devils. So our boy Trey Locked on Devils asked if Sheldon Keefe was a good coach. That was one thing. No, I don't have it up there. But he asked if Sheldon Keefe was a good coach. I still, yes. The answer is yes. I think Sheldon Keefe was a good coach. I think he was here, long enough where the message got stale, and for whatever reason, they needed a new voice. But I think Sheldon Keefe is going to do really well in New Jersey. I honestly believe that.
I think, yeah. I think especially if you're a team that's just been stuck in a rut, Sheldon Keefe has shown that he can get it done in the regular season, right? The Leafs were a 100-point team every single time. A lot of teams would kill to be even close to that. And I think for the Devils' sake, you got somebody who, had a lot of experience of what went right and now can take what didn't work and get a chance to fix it. So I think I think for the Devils, he was an ideal fit as soon as I heard the Devils were interested.
Get him a goalie. That's all I got to say. Trey, you get a goalie on your squad. The Devils are back to a team that should be in cup contention. Honestly, from out of the playoffs to cup contention with a Markstrom level goaltender or a Saros, one of those top goalies that are out there and available. This team automatically gets back into cup contention, legitimately. And health, obviously. This is assuming good health, which Hughes and Hischier did not have. And obviously Dougie Hamilton missed most of the year last year as well. So good health, good goaltending. That's a cup contending roster right there. Sheldon Keefe, I think, can deliver them there as well, by the way.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we'll save the rest for next week. So if we didn't get to your question, we apologize. We do like to yap. We still ended up going pretty long as is. There's still a bunch of the ones that we didn't get to from YouTube, and we didn't get to our Discord questions as well. So we can do that next week. We'll do another mailbag segment, but that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms, including up on YouTube, and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. I got one more question, Dave, and it requires a yes or a no answer. When we return on Monday, will the Florida Panthers be Stanley Cup champions? Will they win Saturday and sweep the series? No. Okay. All right.
I think Edmonton found a little life at the end of that game. I think they found a little life. They had the Panthers on their heels a bit here. Obviously, now the Oilers are on their heels, but I think they're going to be such a desperate team. And
Dave, it was a yes or no answer. Now you're giving me a whole diatribe.
I said no.
I say yes. We'll see who's right on Monday. We'll be back with another episode for you guys on Monday. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.